Hello and welcome to talking about buy-to-let property investment. Today we are delighted to have Scott Graham from Graham and Sibbald, the surveyors, and we're going to first of all talk about home reports, a bit of a deep dive into home reports. Scott is, as I said, Graham and Sibbald. He is a surveyor who mainly operates in the areas around West Lothian and the Forth Valley. I've probably not done Scott any justice there in that introduction. Apologies, Scott. But you are a surveyor. I've definitely got that in. You're a surveyor with Graham and Sibbald. So home reports, Scott.
Yeah, so the home report came in 2008. I think it was late 2008, December. And basically the reason that the home report came in, there was three reasons. The first one being that to basically address the problem of estate agents artificially putting low prices to get people through the door. The multiple surveys for the same property was another reason, and also to provide better information for both.
So it came out in 2008. That's when
2008, 1st of December.
After the financial crash, it was.
Yeah, basically, I think that was the incentive, and it was to provide sellers more information on what they were actually buying, and also to give the opportunity for buyers to maybe, carry out some repairs that were necessary. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that we're talking just about England for a second, comparing, Scottish property with English property. I think that home reports are the envy of people in England, English property. I think that, certainly the people we speak to, they often say, we should have home reports down here. I think they have something similar, but it's not mandatory, I don't think. And
they've got
possibly. So I think home reports in general are good things. Maybe we could talk about the pros and the cons of them a little bit, but they are good, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that being able to, because if you go to view a property, sometimes you're only in that property for 10 minutes as a potential buyer. The home report allows you to maybe look at things that are beyond what you can see, and also, not everyone that goes to view a property is an expert in property. So it gives them a little bit of an indication what are the things they should be concentrating on if they buy it, in terms of, repairs and maintenance, and also they know what the valuation of the property is.
Yeah.
That valuation is what the valuation is. There's not going to be 4 or 5 different surveyors giving slightly different valuations. That's kind of set in stone.
Yeah, and how do you come to that valuation, Scott? Obviously, for people,
for residential property, it's the comparable method. So, as a firm, or basically as an RIC, as regulated firm, we use a minimum of 3 comparable properties, ideally sold within the last 6 months and of the same size, style, and condition. Obviously, there are some areas, especially rural properties, where that's not necessarily as easy to come by. You might have to spread the net a little bit wider in terms of area, and make some adjustments in terms of condition and size. A lot of it comes down to experience, but it's the comparable method. I always say it's a bit of a blend between a kind of scientific method and intuition, if you like. The more experience you get, the more you can kind of gauge where the valuation of the property lies. But you've got to have your comparable evidence and justify that, because any lender will want to see that as well. So you've got to not only satisfy your own, intuition, if you like, you've also got to make sure that the lenders are happy with that figure as well.
Back it up. You've got to back it up as well with some evidence, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So that home report value is based on the sales figure of another property that was sold in the street, not the home report value of another property that was sold on the street. So you're looking at the home report value of other properties and the sales figure of other properties. Is that right?
Yeah, I think in the last couple of years, you've got to take things. Sometimes you've got to dive a little bit deeper. If you look at a house, say it had a valuation of 250,000, but it's sold for 350,000. That doesn't necessarily mean that the same equivalent house is going to be worth 350,000. There was obviously something in that house that, caused a spike in demand. So the valuation likely lies somewhere between those two figures. It's taking a more holistic view of, 2 or 3 other properties that are similar, rather than just pinning on your hopes on one, if you like.
I also was learned something quite recently, that the properties that are on the market just now, that information actually isn't relevant. It's really because you don't know what they've sold for yet. So a lot of people would say, clients would say, look, I've had a check and there's a property that's on the market and it's got a home report of X amount, and it's just up the road and it's the same type of property as mine. Why is the surveyor, saying this number when clearly there's evidence that it could be more? Now the answer I was given is because, well, they've had to sort of discount the detail of that property that's not yet been sold. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, sometimes you can use the information if it's sold and you have the sale price.
Yeah,
that information,
but it's not been sold.
It's not a figure that's in the land registry essentially, so you can't.
I mean, for me, it was still interesting information, and I'm sure the surveyor did take it into account because it had gone on the market months ago. Yeah, and hadn't sold, and
I was indicated that it's
that gives you good information, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure. I think Ross might ask this question. We're going to steal it, but it's what can you think of in terms of what improvements can we make to the home reports? We know, to be honest, that the home reports are great, but they're not perfect. Your screen's gone a funny colour. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure what is going on.
Anyway, moving on. Moving on quickly from that. You can still see you. It's quite cool, actually.
Yeah, it's telling me how energy efficient your house is. I think it's like they were telling me the heat loss is in your house.
It's very much like a heat map, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've got a converted attic, and I can tell you in the winter it's pretty cold up here. So yeah,
we need. I'm interested to know your EPC rating, actually.
Yeah, it's not great.
So what do you think? Anything that we, Ross and all of us, what do we think can be improved in home reports?
I mean, there have been a couple of kind of studies of the home report. I think there was one last done in 2015, and there was meant to be one. The results were meant to come out late 2021. Obviously, I think the pandemic kind of kiboshed that a little bit. Right. And I think generally, as a document, it's quite good. I think in terms of anything being added into it, I think you don't want to overcomplicate it. I think the way it is at the moment, you've got the components of the building, the condition of what it is, mortgage valuation report, and an energy performance certificate. I think adding something else into that might just kind of muddy the waters a little bit. I think what
about photographs, Scott? Scott, photographs and videos of the inspection. I often find that the roof inspection in particular, when there is a visual inspection from the street, is not great. And I know that sometimes it's because access isn't available for you to get onto the roof. But I just think there should be, in this day and age, there should be technology used in a way to incorporate into the home report, certainly visual photographs of issues that you've identified. If there is a 2 that's on the home report, what does it look like? Here's some photographs to back up as it was at the time of the inspection. Why aren't photographs used?
Well, we do take photographs and we keep them in our file, but I think for putting them in the home report, I think because it's a standardized document, and it would need to, if all the interested parties would need to basically approve that. I'm not sure the reason why there's not photographs. It could be the size of photographs in the file, something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure, but certainly as surveyors, we take photos usually of all the defects as well, because we live in a society now that does like to, if there's something they're not entirely happy with, they'll let us know. So we've usually got something. This is what we've seen at the time. So.
Have you got any dispute stories to tell us, Scott? Not obviously going into details about properties.
I think any surveyor who's doing a number of surveys will have disputes against them, and unfortunately comes with the nature of the job, and the kind of the increasingly litigious society we're in. Hands up, occasionally you do miss something. You do also come across people who have, actively tried to hide something as well, which it makes our job a little bit more difficult if they're deliberately trying to hide something. But I think it's, as a surveyor, if you go in, you've got I myself have a kind of routine that I use so that I don't miss anything. When I go into a room, direction, going from top to bottom, make sure I'm covering every single part of the room, every single part of the house. And if there is something that you don't see, explaining that in your limitations to inspection to say, I've not been able to see the rear roof pitch because, it's a tenement flat and the garden only stretches, 15 feet behind. It's just impossible. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot on home reports there. We probably need to watch our time a little bit. Does that seem about right? Said enough?
I think so. I think so. I had a query about EPCs, obviously added on to the home report. I had a situation recently where a home report was produced that had an EPC rating of D. The buyer was only prepared to buy it if the EPC got reviewed. So there was an EPC specialist went out to the property and went out and had a look at it and said, well, actually, this EPC rating is actually a C. So he changed it to the EPC rating that the surveyor had. And I just wonder whether that's to do with maybe the training that goes on and the EPC guy is living and breathing EPCs on a daily basis. But I suppose, Scott, you're sort of more focused on sort of the home reports and maybe the defects. And I wonder whether
I think the EPC does form an important part of the document, and we go through quite rigorous auditing from our the company that provides the software where we input our EPCs. So I would almost argue that because of the number we're doing per day, we're probably more adept at carrying out EPCs than somebody who's kind of self-employed doing them. Just because every single home report requires an EPC. So if you're doing 4 home reports a day, you're doing 4 EPCs a day over a year, that tallies up. I mean, my Elmhurst system that I use it on, where I'm sitting well over kind of 2,000. So that's
yeah. And I suppose we're heading towards minimum standards for EPC ratings for rental properties as well as private homes at some point in the future. Yeah. So the EPC rating is going to be important, as well as the work that you specify in your home report to bring the EPC rating up, and that's going to have an impact on valuations, I suppose, going forward. Maybe in 5 years' time, 7 years' time, 10 years' time.
I know that the when it comes to the requirements to bring something up, that's something we don't necessarily have that's pre-populated. So based on the information that you input, the system tells you what is required to take it up to, say from a band D to a band C. Sometimes that's not always possible though, especially in, if you say a new town property in Edinburgh and you've been told you need to put double glazing windows in, you can get these new thin double glazing sash encasement windows, but they cost an absolute fortune. So the impact of, the financial savings that you will make by installing these compared to the cost of actually putting the windows in wouldn't be a cost-effective solution. So yeah, I know that they are reviewing the database where costs and things are obtained. So when we put in an EPC, it comes from I can't remember the name of the database, but basically it calculates a house of this size with this heating system will cost this much to run. Obviously what's happened in the last couple of years shows that, if you could heat your house for £1,200 a year, you're doing pretty well. It's going to be at least double that, I'd imagine. So I know that they're updating those parameters as well. I don't know how much that's going to impact on the ratings. I'm assuming it will have some form of impact. But yeah, we're still waiting for that to come down.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I do need to probably wrap this up, but I do think, the EPC, the energy efficiency side of things is going to be one of the big changes going to have to happen somewhere in the home report, somewhere in the EPC, and the software is going to have to change, and it's just going to be a lot more in depth and probably in more kind of layman terms as well, so that general public can understand it, because it's not just going to be relevant to property investors and so on. It's going to be more relevant to everybody. So, okay, well, Scott, thanks so much for talking us through home reports and everything around it.
No problem.
It's part one of a two-part interview. We'll go on to part two in a second, where we're going to look at the market in general and the specifics around about the location that you work in, so West Lothian and the Forth Valley. So thanks again. Thank you, Scott.
Perfect.
For that.
Cheers.
Thanks, bye.